Millennials are exhausted. From crushing student debt in their 40s to the hustle culture, they're saying that they are burnt out. So, are they the neglected middle child of the world? I'm Stefanie Dekker, and welcome to the stream.
We're millennials, and our whole personality is a trauma response.
We don't want to be here. We didn't ask for this.
Love you, honey.
Millennials, and we overthink everything. We're millennials, and we think we're going to be fired every single day.
They worry about everything. Millennials grew up in a very different world than today. It was slow without social media, and the radical changes of the last 20 years, projecting them into a digital world, has them struggling to cope. Now we're going to peel back the layers today of a generation whose biggest coping mechanism is turning everything to a meme using dark humor. Well, to discuss all of this, we are joined by Sammie Ellard-King, a financial educator who founded Up the Gains, an online platform to help British people get financially fit. He's joining us from London. And we have Danielle Roberts. She's an anti-career coach. Her work aims to help organizations build human-first work cultures and de-influence people from the hustle culture. She's joining us from Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. Thank you both very much for joining us today. Danielle, I'm going to start with you. You're a millennial. This show is about millennial burnout. Are you burnt out? And where, if you are, where did it all go wrong?
Yes, for better or for worse, I am a millennial. I would say I am on the other end of a 2-year burnout, and I don't think it's a personal problem. I believe that it's structural and it's a predictable outcome of the system that we live in. 49% of millennials are burnt out most of the time. And that's simply because all of us were handed this social contract, right? If you go to college, take on debt, work hard, then you will receive some semblance of stability. And none of us have really seen our lives play out that way. Nearly half of us have a side hustle to make ends meet. And we've been expected to pour more and more into a system that is giving us less and less in return. So the question isn't really like, why are we burnt out? I think the question is, what happens when an entire generation is asked to pour more into a system that gives less back? I think that's the conversation that we need to have.
Sammie, I'm going to head to you in a second on your expertise, because you are the financial man. We're going to ask, is it the fault of millennials that they can't afford to buy a house? Is it because they're not financially responsible, as they're sometimes accused of? Watch this.
Millennials can't afford homes because you like coffee and avocado toast. Like, are you joking? I did the math, okay?
It's not the avocado toast.
Like, if we went and got a coffee and bought a coffee every single day, roughly it works out to be about $1,800, $1,900 each year. Do you know where I can get a home for a down payment of $1,800 to $1,900?
So the average millennial is 36 years old and basically has nothing to their name. No house, no retirement fund, no kids. But what they do have, besides trauma, is credit card debt, student debt, while baby boomers are living lavish because they are the richest generation to date, and they have all the things. They have houses, multiple houses, if anything. They were able to afford life on one income. They were able to send themselves and their kids to college. The list goes on and on. Where is this American dream that we speak of? Because at 30, 40 years old, people are needing to live with roommates in order to afford to even have a roof over their house.
What they do have besides trauma, Sammie, you're a money man, you're a content creator trying to educate millennials and all of us, I guess, on how to be smarter with our cash. Have they gone wrong? Are they not money smart, or has it just been impossible for them to keep up?
Yeah, I think Danielle mentioned this, but the social contract which we kind of grew up with has been broken. Like you would go to university, you would get a safe job, and then you would be able to build up a career and then finally be able to afford a home. But when we look at the statistics, essentially what it is what it would cost you for a deposit in a house in the UK and in many countries across the world is getting larger and larger. So the rate essentially of how much you earn versus how much deposit you're going to need is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's taking people a lot longer to get there over that period of time which they thought was acceptable. And so a lot of millennials are giving up. And unfortunately, what's happening is that rents are rising faster than they can keep up with. And so they're being forced to move around a lot. And this is sort of creating that divide and that burnout that you're mentioning there for sure.
All right, well, let's move to a fun fact. Millennials are the last generation that grew up offline. Life seemed simpler when they were kids. For example, at family gatherings, they didn't have an iPad or a phone to entertain them. And then the world changed with technology. All this before they graduated from university, and then they were faced with a forever changed workplace.
Technology grew exponentially in the span of like 20 years. We went from flip phones to Martin Luther King AI videos. How do you think that affected the workforce? Technology's better. That means we're more efficient. That means that we can work faster. Notifications, emails, work from home, Zoom meeting, PTO, make them work for it. Everything is hurried. You might say everybody's affected by this, but here's why I disagree. Gen Z, we grew up on technology. I had a Game Boy when I was like 6 years old. All I know is technology, so it's normalcy for me. And Gen X and the boomers, they completely missed it. Their families are already established. Their homes are bought. They've already set up their retirement. Now, if anything, technology is hilarious to them. They don't give a shit. It barely affects their lives. But millennials, they saw what life was like before technology, and now they live in life after technology. And they probably look back on the days where they could just be bored and not feel like they were in a rush 24/7 and say, I wish I could have it back.
It's interesting, both of you keep nodding profusely to the sound bites that were chosen by the show's producer, Narsena. I was actually also talking to our senior producer, Cora, also a millennial. She was going through the sound bites and she was saying, I don't know whether to laugh or cry because they are so accurate. So all of you on a cross-section seem to agree with this. Danielle, I wanted to ask you about the digital world. Spending so much time online, how much of a factor has this also played in this feeling of burnout?
I think it plays a huge factor. Technology was marketed as this thing that was supposed to make us more productive, when in fact the data tells us that every task switch makes us lose 23 minutes of productive time. So when we're checking messages, checking email, checking social, we're really losing our ability to focus. So I think, life before technology was where we could have more wonder and imagination. And life after technology is where we are so overburdened and with information that we can't innovate. We can't be creative in the way that we want to. And that robs us of joy. It also robs the companies that we work for of joy with, the economy. When we can't contribute creative ideas and we're burnt out all the time, it has effects, sick days, employee turnover. We can't compete globally. So I think we need to stop asking what is the short-term impact and what is going to be the long-term outcome of being a chronically online culture. I see a lot of social media now where people are taking their iPhones back and reporting and getting flip phones instead. People are craving a simpler time when they can be bored and when their brain has the space to breathe.
And I think that I was doing some research for the show, and it's key because Gen Z now seems to be even more burnt out than millennials, and that young people, according to the happiness index, this was done last year, are less and less happy than they used to be before. And there was one US-based doctor describing this as a red flag and ascribing this to social media, having this effect on this generation that is growing up fully digital, or millennials and even us now more and more digital. Sammie, I'm curious. Is there also a failure here of society, a failure of governments to be able to provide for this kind of the consequences of this digital world? Because it's not going away, even if we are rejecting it at times.
Yeah, look, for me, this social media thing is largely driven by cheap debt and spending and comparison culture. So we're going into these worlds where for actually 0.0001% of individuals don't exist in this world. And so we feel like we need to keep up. And so we're taking out cheap debt. We're using buy now, pay later. We're keeping up with the Joneses. And we used to only do that battle with people on our streets and our communities. But now we're doing it with the entire internet. And there is a kind of failure to really protect young people from this. And we're seeing social media usage actually drop off. So in Gen Z in particular, the actual peak was back in 2020, and that's been coming down in terms of social media usage. And people are actively seeking, including myself. I have apps on my phone which limit my social media use. And I think it's massively important to be able to disconnect from social media and be present with the people that are around you, because marketing is so smart. And eventually they're going to get you with an ad. And if you live in a city, you see 10,000 adverts a day if you're using a digital device. And eventually one's going to get you. So I do think there's a failure from protection around these things that are not in place at the moment, for sure.
Such an important point. Before, you used to compete with the kids on your street or the kids in school. And now you're competing with an entire world, a lot of it that is filtered, a lot of it that is not true. Danielle, do you agree with that? And do you think we can reverse this at any point?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Social media is a highlight reel of people's lives. And before I do what I do now, I spent 14 years working in social media marketing. So I agree that the marketing psychology of convincing you to buy things that you don't really need to keep up with the Joneses, as Sammie said, is very much a real thing. But I don't think that hope is lost by any stretch of the imagination. You see younger generations getting creative. I just saw a piece of social media content last night where women our age are having admin nights, and they're just being in community and knocking out their tasks together, and then closing their laptops and just enjoying each other's time. So you're seeing people's natural human instincts come forward again, where they want safety, belonging, connection. These are like the natural things that all of us have in common. So I think that I believe that if we can keep investing in one another and our connections, having these conversations, doing deep research, I'm seeing more of a shift toward long-term content instead of short-term content as well. I'm actually hopeful for the future, even though things feel really heavy right now.
Okay, we like the optimism. Well, the term hustle culture has become very popular when millennials were in their early 20s, but glorifying the nonstop work mindset has caused burnout for so many of them. So has the work actually been rewarding?
Like, as a survivor of millennial hustle culture, let me tell you what it was actually like. First of all, we lived at work. We didn't go home. You worked from home maybe if you... someone like there was a plumber coming and like you needed to be home, so you would work from home for like 2 hours and then you'd be back in your chair. You came into work sick. The idea that now people, like, if they have a headache, they like go off camera on Zoom. You had to show up. I once gave a presentation while like actively losing vision in one of my eyes. Going to work sick was not frowned upon. It was like resume building. Like if you showed up with like bronchitis, you were getting promoted.
Sammie, so millennials are known for being highly adaptable, right? You guys can deal with anything. So why is the stress and the anxiety so high? Why isn't it like, okay, right, I see it, this is the way, I'm going to adapt and I'm going to work my way around this? Why is it proving so difficult?
I think it's a really good point. And like, before, you would be in a workplace, you would have that level of community. Like right now, I run a business remotely, and so I don't have a lot of connection with people on a day-to-day basis, and that can be so challenging for people, especially as you're going back into the workplace. And for me, it's like, how can we try to install like a little bit more connection back into what we do? And right now, when you're seeing life struggles and this social media culture and this hustle culture, 2 in 5 people in the UK have a side hustle at the moment. And I know that number is very similar in the US. Like, we're feeling like we are needing to have to earn more just to keep up. Like, cost of living and inflation is taking the kind of what we would see as everyday experiences away from us. And we're having to be really choosy about where we spend our money and our time. And that is causing a lot of problems for people in a day-to-day.
So Danielle, I want to throw this to you because every time we have this debate about millennials or Gen Z, the older generation, the Gen X, I'm an Xennial, if I said it correctly, which kind of straddles Gen X and straddles the millennials. So we probably have a little bit of the worst and the best of both of those worlds, but it always seems to turn into a bit of a fight of accusations. Well, we worked hard and, you know, we didn't complain and we showed up. Why does it always become generational and accusatory when it comes to these generations saying that basically, well, you're just not tough enough to handle it?
Yeah, I think because it attacks people's identities and like the community that they grow up in, and it implies that everything that they did work hard for was somehow not as important. But I don't think it's a generation versus generation thing at all. I actually think we've all been burnt out, but burnout looks differently for our generation. So for example, my dad has worked for 40 years in tile and marble. He's hoping to retire early next year. I said, that's super exciting. What are you gonna get? And he said, oh, they give us a pin. And the first thing he needs to do after he retires is get 2 new knees. So his generation very much burned out physically. They sacrificed their bodies for stability. Our burnout, on the other hand, is more mental, emotional, and even like existential, because our identities are wrapped up in our career. So if we don't have that, what do we have? So I would like to see the conversation shift from the generation blame game to, you know, how have we similarly and differently experienced this?
I just want to quickly follow up with that before I go back to you, Sammie. You're an anti-career coach. Like,
yes.
So how does that work? Because it's exactly what you have been fed, and all of us were fed, is like, you've got to work, you've got to get a career, go to university. Life is going to be perfect if you tick all the boxes, right? So anti-career, what does that mean?
Yeah, so that was born out of regular career coaches help you try and find your dream job. And I am of the philosophy that dream jobs don't exist. And we were kind of sold a lie to pursue that and try and find it. And that's one of the primary reasons we are burnt out. And really now my work sits at the intersection of burnout, identity, and future of work. And taking our relationship with work right now that feels so distorted and building something more humane in its place.
Okay, Sammie, let's go back to finances. Which generation, if you can classify as that, are doing better financially? Did boomers and Gen X have it easier? Because Gen Z, even though they are burnt out, some of them are doing extremely well. How would you describe it?
Well, yeah, a large part of boomers and Gen X are homeowners, right? And so if you own a home, traditionally it's beaten inflation as it's risen up and those asset prices have gone up. And that has, you know, a drastic effect on younger people, because where the house prices rise faster than wages and inflation, then there's a problem there, because the younger generation can't get onto the housing ladder, and then the boomers can't sell them those houses because no one else can afford it, and we go for a round into this cycle. And in the UK we have inheritance tax, and so the government take a large chunk of it when you do pass. And so it's this kind of game at the moment where if you can even get onto the housing ladder, you have done something absolutely extraordinary. And the average number of when you finally get onto the housing ladder is just increasing every single couple of years. Even when we do studies back to 2020 versus today, the drastic changes in wealth and where that money is now shifted, and wealth inequality in the UK and all around the world is absolutely mind-blowing. And this number is just drastically getting bigger every single year.
Is there a way to change that, do you think? Is this a pattern that can be reversed, or is this a trend?
It is very much a trend, and it's going to be very, very difficult to stop because housing stock, for example, in the UK is short. We need to build a lot more homes, but we're not able to build the homes because they're way too expensive to build and then sell them back to the people that can actually afford them at a price which is profitable for those home builders. So it's a real catch-22 situation right now.
All right, well, let's switch to the mindset. Along the way, what happened to millennials' psychology? Is this a generation of people pleasers because they've been through a lot of big changes? And is that their way of keeping the peace?
I think I speak for all millennials when I say, like, we are the customer service generation, you know, not because we all work in customer service, but because we live like we do. You know, we were raised to put everybody else first. The customer's always right. And somewhere along the lines that became like our entire personality. You know, we say things like, no worries, when there are definitely worries. We put LOLs and ha-has at the end of every text so that we don't come across too aggressive. You know, we grew up watching our parents send food back at a restaurant when it came out wrong, which is a totally normal thing to do. But if my food comes out slightly wrong, most likely I'm just going to eat it. And then I'll probably tip 25% because I feel bad I even had the thought of sending it back and how awkward that would have been for the server. It's ridiculous. It's objectively ridiculous.
I saw both of you laughing. Danielle, do you agree? Are you a people pleaser?
I am a recovering people pleaser. I can definitely resonate with every single thing that he said, the LOLs, the no worries when there are a lot of worries. It's a generational thing. And I think because we were raised to equate our worth with like achievements and attention. And when you fuse your identity with your output, with what people think of you, I think people pleasing is a natural byproduct of that. It's almost a survival skill.
Sammie, do you agree? And I want to have a little bit of fun with this because, as we say, there is a lot of debate between generations accusing. How would you describe, let's say, Gen X, Xennial, because, you know, let's not forget about them, Millennials and Gen Z. If you had to, like, you know, give it a general description, how would you break them down?
Oh, cool. That's a real tough question.
Have fun with it. Have fun with it.
I was laughing because I totally agree with Danielle on that one, though, because I actually just love that she said that, because my entire business is on social media. Like my existence is largely like affected by the amount of views that we bring in. And it's like, it's a battle that we have every day in my own brain. For sure, 110%. You know, like, and I think it's something actually I was speaking to a friend of mine yesterday. You know, you have to try and find purpose in what you're doing. But if your entire purpose is showing up online, then there's this kind of divide. Like, are you just pleasing others, or are you actually saying what you want to say? And that's why that clip is so powerful, because it's totally right. Like, you know, we people please to an absolute 10th degree. But it's really interesting. Like when you look at Gen Z, some of my my partner sister's kids are of that age group, and it's really interesting how they interact with technology versus how we interact. You know, we're very much like Instagram type culture, and these guys are like rapid fire Snapchat, constantly chatting, like their entire lives are literally online. And millennials still have that level of divide between this is my social life and this is my actual online life, as we would probably call them both the same. But Gen Z is just so online. And then boomers is and, you know, later generations are like Facebook posts and status and putting pictures up and you know, saying hello at the start of the messages. And it is so interesting seeing like the complete divide of these different platforms. We're across them all, and so we really do see how people interact on them, and it is mind-blowing. And yeah, I love that clip that you showed. I thought it was absolutely bang on for millennials for sure.
Well, Danielle, let's get some advice from you, right? And I think this is not just about millennials. This is for all of us who perhaps feel burnt out, you know, work-life balance. What for you is like, you know, top, let's say 3 tips for someone who's thinking, oh my God, I'm drowning. You know, I don't want to go to work, or I don't like my work, or I don't have a job. Like, how do we move forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's going to vary from person to person. But I would say first, even changing your mindset of work-life balance in general, I don't think work-life balance exists. We have to work for the large majority of our lives to maybe get some years to spend and enjoy at the, when we retire. So I think we really need to think about what brings me joy in this moment based on my values. One of the biggest game changers for me in starting to alleviate my burnout is having hobbies and passions that were not work or screen related. If you don't have strong foundations outside of work, it's always going to be your default because it's a neural pathway at this point. It is a habit. You're going to sit down and work or scroll social media more if you don't have something else to look forward to. And third, don't think you have to do everything alone. American culture is all about individualism. And if you can't do everything and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and stand on your own too, something is wrong with you. But we are social creatures. We need each other. So talk to your friends about your mental and emotional state, what you might need help with that they have the capacity for, and open space for them to ask you the same. I think that's how we all start to alleviate burnout together.
I think that's a great way to end this show. Sammie and Danielle, thank you for coming on. It's been a wonderful discussion. And I think key there for all of us to remember, have a hobby away from the screen and away from work. And thank you for watching from me and the entire very fantastic Stream team. I'll see you soon.